All right, for this video, I want to touch on the recent FinCEN notice that was published this week on February 18th. And this notice provides an additional 30 days, so it updates the extended due date for when reporting companies created before January 1st, 2024 have to file their initial or corrected BOI report. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with this obligation, this is a new filing obligation as a result of the Corporate Transparency Act. So this act was passed a number of years ago, and essentially it requires U.S. entities, so whether that's an LLC or a corporation, etc., to file a report with FinCEN to disclose the company's name, tax ID address, and report information on who are the entity's beneficial owners. All right. Now, the deadlines for these entities depend upon when the company was created. So all of this litigation here that happened over the last few months, mostly in December, but it's carried into January and February, they finally landed back on the side where the CTA is back in effect, and so companies have to file these BOI reports. So the BOI reporting requirements under the CTA are once again back in effect. However, because the Treasury Department recognizes they need additional time to comply, FinCEN has extended the deadline 30 calendar days from February 19th for most companies. So for companies that were created before January 1st, 2024 and had a filing deadline of Jan 1, 2025, your new reporting deadline is March 21, 2025. So if you haven't filed it yet, you've got another month to go ahead and get it prepared and submitted. Now, I'll put a link in the description below to the notice if you want to read the entire thing. They do provide some more background on all the litigation that's been going on. But I have created a summary here, which I think is a little better kind of summarizing all of the dates and what's been going on here, and try to keep it as simple as possible. So the notice applies to entities created before January 1, 2024. So if you had an entity before January 1, 2024, the original deadline was Jan 1, 2025. This notice that we just looked at moves that deadline from Jan 1, 2025 to March 21st, 2025. All right. Now, what do we do with entities that were created after January 1, 2024? Well, all of this litigation just applied to those pre-January 1, 2024 entities. If you had an entity formed in 2024, the filing deadline for the BOI report was within 90 days of formation. All right, so you set up a company March 1st, 2024. You've got 90 days from March 1st, 2024 to file the BOI report, right? That's the base rule. Now, there's some other extensions that apply for 2024 because of the hurricanes, right? Now, the 6-month extension applies to entities that were created and have a deadline that falls within one of these ranges, and the company's principal place of business falls within one of the federally designated disaster areas that were impacted by these hurricanes. Okay, so for example, if we have an example down here, if we have an LLC that was created in Florida and the principal place of business is in Florida, it's in Southwest Florida. Let's say the LLC formation date was July 30th, 2024. The original filing deadline would be October 28th, 2024, so 90 days after July 30th. Now, because this business, the principal place of business, is located within a qualified disaster area during Hurricane Helene, and the deadline, October 28, 2024, falls within this range, so it's between September 2022 or September 22 and December 21, they get an extra 6 months. So you would take October 28th, add on 6 months, and that's the new deadline to file your BOI report. All right. Now, this doesn't just apply to entities created in 2024 for entities impacted by Hurricane Milton. So if you look at Hurricane Milton, If you have a filing deadline that's between October 4th and January 2nd, 2025, you get an extra 6 months. Well, who does this include? This includes entities that were created before January 1, 2024, right? So if you have a company and your principal place of business was in a federally declared disaster area that was impacted by Hurricane Milton, your original deadline was Jan 1, 2025, but because you fall within this range for Hurricane Milton, the new deadline is to add 6 months, and so now you get up to June 30th, 2025 to file the return. And that's important because what this notice is also highlighted down here is that they've said if you're a reporting company and you were previously given a reporting deadline that's later than March 21st, 2025, you can use the later deadline. So what they're targeting there are those companies that had a Jan 1 deadline, Jan 1, 2025 deadline, but they were impacted by Hurricane Milton. And so now they don't have to file by March 21. They can go out to June 30th. All right. Now, I also want to touch on the possibility of penalty implementation here. So if you look at the penalties, it's a per day penalty for being late, and it is quite severe. It's hundreds of dollars. Now, I think the enforcement, and this is just pure speculation on my point, I think the enforcement is going to be light initially. And I think mainly because it's a new filing, and unless you are willfully evading this filing, I think they're going to be a little more lenient than perhaps some other agencies are with respect to late filed returns. And what's interesting is if you look at the BOI report, so this is a blank report, the PDF version. You can also submit this just purely online using the web browser. But if you look at the PDF version and the web browser version as well, what you'll notice is that when you complete the report, nowhere in the report does it ask you to enter the date the entity was formed and whatever the original due date was, which is interesting because you think it'd be quite easy for them to just add a line item that said, okay, here's the information on the reporting company. I've got my name, tax ID number, jurisdiction, where it was formed, address, but there's no line item that provides that you enter, okay, I set up a company on July 30th, 2024, and then they would just add on 90 days and look at the timestamp from when you submitted it and discover that, oh, look, you filed it late, right? There's nothing like that built into the form yet. And so that suggests to me that perhaps they're not as concerned with all of these getting submitted timely. I take that back, strike that. They're concerned that these things are going to be submitted timely, but if you file it and it's not filed on time, so not within the 90-day window, I'm not so certain that they're going to just immediately start handing out tens of thousands of dollars in penalties. All right, so that can give you some peace of mind, I think, when you go to prepare these forms. So the takeaway here is, make sure you get this return filed. You've got to do it. Even if you are filing late, file it. I don't think that FinCEN is going to impose any penalties, but if they do, there are always avenues to ask for relief. There are reasonable cause relief procedures that exist with a lot of these filings, and so they can grant you some leniency. Okay, so I'm going to put a link in the description below for the notices so you can go check those out yourself. And I do have some tutorials covering how to complete the BOI reports, so I'll put those in the description below as well. All right, so thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on the next one.